everyone, my name is Kat Moonchild. I am a psychic, I am a medium, and I am also a Reiki master. You can also find me at Moonchild Dreams on Facebook and on Instagram. Spelling found here. It's not spelled the way you think. You can find additional content there. I have wire wrapping, metaphysical jewelry, some tidbits on stone healing there as well, or the metaphysical properties of stones. And I also have uplifting and positive quotes, so feel free to check me out over there for anything else that you're interested in. And you can also find announcements for every new video I post over there as well. So today what we were going to be doing was I was actually going to create this follow-up video about the different kinds of psychic ability that there are, as a follow-up to the previous video on how to find your own personal reading style that best suits you. Now I do have my notes over here just to keep track, because there's so much that we can talk about in this segment, and there's so much that we can talk about all these things. So I just wanted to keep a list of the key points to kind of keep me on track, so I have organized information. And again, most of this information is going to be coming out of my head, and most of this information is also coming from a psychic course that I developed for psychic development specifically. And it's not just geared towards just tarot, it's got tidbits on all sorts of different things. So what we're going to be doing is messages, how we receive them through our psychic ability, and how to tell. So first we're going to start off with claircognizance, which is the probably most difficult to explain, but claircognizant is really about the knowing part, or the instinctual part of our psychic ability. I really tell a lot of people that you'll find, cops, firefighters, military, law enforcement officers, they all are the ones that are best known for their claircognizant ability, that they naturally develop it. How many times have you heard a soldier or a law enforcement officer say they just walked into a situation just knowing something was going to go down, but they had no reason to know that. They just knew, and they call it an instinct. That's true, it is an instinct, but claircognizance also psychic ability for the knowing part. The thing we want to also understand about psychic ability is it's the psyche in the way that it works, our mental thought processes, and not just our mental thought processes. Let me get back out of frame a little bit here, guys, so you can see me a little bit, because I guess I keep... Anyway, psychic is the way that we process. So when we are also looking at psychic from a definition standpoint, which I'm going to put the definition here, it's also talking about the way that our brain works. And a lot of the things that we need to understand about psychic ability is that it's actually coming from the cerebral cortex to the pineal gland in the front from the back to the front, the frontal lobes. All that information is coming through here, through the crown and the third eye. So when people are saying, claircognizant is not the same as an instinct, I don't see that as true. I see claircognizant being the developed instinct of an individual, but professional psychics have harnessed that to a more minute degree, or a more finite ability to be able to utilize that to also access past and future. Now, when you're talking about a soldier or a law enforcement officer that says, I felt like something was going to go down, that's precognitive. That's claircognizant, precognitively knowing that in the future, something, very, very near future, something is going to go down. It can also settle in as a feeling of knowing something is going to change. I know that they're doing this. It's an unquestioning knowing factor, and that's claircognizance. Again, spelling can be found here. Claircognizant really does cover a lot of that instinctual knowing gut feeling, but there's an absoluteness to it that is not just I think I know. You know. You don't know why you know, but you know. That's claircognizant. Claircognizant is the knowing process. Going into clairsentience, there's a lot of things to cover about clairsentience, and I'm actually going to be making a separate video for my empaths. Clairsentience is empath, again, spelling will be right here. Clairsentience really has so many different ways that it manifests. A lot of people are more familiar with like your animal empaths, people that are very, very close to animals, that connect with animals more than they connect to people. Those are the people that like to work with nonprofits, your animal activists. They feel for the animal. That's an animal empath. There's emotional empaths that connect to the emotional information of the people around them. That's most commonly known as far as empaths go, but there's actually several different kinds of empaths. I would say I probably have all of the empathic ability because I'm just that much of an empath. I will say it has toned down over the years as I've gotten older. Thank goodness, that has been a blessing. But empathy can be one of the hardest psychic abilities to have for a lot of different people, especially for empaths, mediums. I've seen a lot of empath mediums struggling very, very hard. But we have the medical, physical empath. I am also a physical empath. That means I feel the pain you feel. Medical empath. Now, we have gone over a lot of the times when doing readings, giving readings, or receiving readings, you should not necessarily receive medical information, or when giving readings, you should definitely not give medical information or medical advice because you are not a medical professional. But there is medical empaths. I am a medical empath. I am a medical intuitive, but I'm still not a nurse. I'm still not a doctor, so I am legally not allowed to give medical advice out. Or if anything is said medically, I have to say I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I cannot diagnose. I cannot give any medical opinions or any medical advice. Any advice that you take is solely up to you and solely for you to take yourself. It's really important to not give out medical advice as a medical empath. But as we've said in other videos, or if I haven't said it yet, if you see something in a reading that signifies some kind of medical attention is needed, point them to a doctor, please. Tell them to go to a doctor. Whether or not they follow that advice is up to them, but it's really important at the very least to get them to take care of their health, or to encourage them to take care of their health. Whether you believe in alternative medicine or Western medicine or whatever the case may be, ethically, morally speaking, it is our job to make sure they take themselves seriously if we see something. That's all I'm saying, guys. However you want to handle that, however you want to do that, that's up to you. But remember, we're not doctors. Doctors are doctors, and it's very important we leave the job up to the professionals. Don't forget that. That's medical empath, physical empath. So yes, I do feel the physical feelings of those around me. It's gotten a lot better. The last couple of years, I've had to put a really strong damper on it, but I think I'm ready to open my empathy back up again. But the physical empathy was one of the hardest things that I had to deal with when growing up. Physical empathy also manifests as absorbing the pain from other people. You start hurting, they start feeling better. Physical empathy is a very, very strong, powerful thing. There's something else called geomantic empathy, which I don't have as strong. That is places that are negative, or places where traumatic events have occurred. I do have a degree of that. I don't have it as strong as other people, but I do have that. I'm not as sensitive to my physical location as other people are. There's plant empaths, so obviously people who connect with the plants and the trees and the flowers. I have a degree of that, just like I have a degree of animal empathy, but my empathy is more geared towards people. and working with people and helping people. So that's where a lot of my empathy really comes into play. Now, one of my strongest abilities and the way I primarily read is claircognizant empath and intuitive empath, which is knowing the blockages, habits, and how to fix those blockages and habits within an individual in a reading style format. That's actually how I read. So when I say I'm a specialized reader, you'll see a lot of times that I'm actually gearing more towards emotional, physical, mental wellness in my readings as opposed to the lottery numbers. I'm just joking. A lot of readers don't actually read that way, but I digress. I don't focus on, when is your ex coming back? I would go, how can we get over your ex? Let's move forward together. That's what I really focus on. And that's claircognizant intuitive empath is what's blocking you, what are you doing that's blocking you, what's preventing you from moving forward in your life, and how can you help that? And the last one is a mirror empath, which mirrors the shadow aspects within other individuals. Shadow aspect is the ego. The ego, the self, and the higher self. Of course, the ego being all the primal instincts, the fear, the jealousy, anger, defense mechanisms. So when you hear me talk about ego or shadow, that's a lot. I'm a big advocate for shadow work, and shadow work is healing the shadow, integrating the shadow, and bringing yourself into wholeness. So that's another video for another time, but mirror empath is somebody who mirrors the lower vibrational qualities of another individual within themselves. All right, so we're going to move on to clairvoyance. Clairvoyance can be found here in spelling. Clairvoyance is your traditional sight. Sight comes through as what appears to be daydreams, dreaming, lucid dreaming, and most of the time sight is not so strong that it seems like actually 3D touchable, like it's not so solid that it's that way. Most clairvoyants that I've talked to, the sight comes through hazy, dreamlike quality, like recalling a dream or recalling a memory, and that's what I see most people reminded as in their clairvoyant visions. Now with clairvoyance, one of the things you want to know is there's two ways it comes through, as always: metaphorical or physical literal. Physical literal is, you don't have the symbolism. A lot of my clairvoyance is symbolic in nature, abstract in nature. If somebody's feeling on top of the world, I will literally see them on top of the world. It's sometimes almost like a game of charades for some people. And sometimes you have to tell your guides, I don't understand that. So seeing things sometimes comes with a learning curve. There will be, again, archetypal images that come through that represent different aspects or different qualities, such as I used to see a man's pocket watch to represent somebody who is very punctual or timely. It was like a gold pocket watch. And I don't really see that as much anymore. I still do see a watch, but it tends to be either a wristwatch or just a watch face or clock face to let me know about timing. If I see a clock, for example, and the hands are moving or spinning very quickly, for example, that means that they need to hurry up, or that they're very conscious of their time going by too quickly, and they're going too quickly and they need to slow down. So kind of, again, context clues for certain images are extremely important for the message itself, because one thing can mean several different things. Seeing a tree for me, for example, is growth. Excuse me, I had a moment. Seeing a tree, for example, is growth. Um, they're growing, they're planted, they're grounded, they're rooted, they're doing very well, they've got good foundations, etc. If I see the tree blowing away, that to me is improper foundations, or they weren't planted properly. Coffee's so good today. You know how I am about my coffee, guys. So like tree getting uprooted, getting blown away, swept away, you know, but those are my symbols, my clues, my visions. And I also see things in color, or lines, stuff like that. So if I'm looking at the flow of prosperity, for example, and I'm seeing a calendar, because I see things as a calendar and not everyone does. That doesn't happen with everyone. But I'll see things like a calendar, and I'll see June, and I'll see June in yellow, and then I'll see a line going down from June and going back up in November. So they're having financial difficulty from June to November, for example. And again, I don't always see that way. The way that I read actually often depends on the individual themselves and what kind of personality they have and what kind of type of person they are themselves. So for example, because I read so strongly beginning in my empathic, claircognizant, sentient spaces, it's the clairsentience as a claircognizant, as an intuitive, and I start there so strong. I read through their psychic ability a lot and how their guides give them messages. So if they're not clairaudient, their guides aren't clairaudient, and then their guides are talking to me. So I'm empathically listening while their guides are connecting with my psychic ability through the psychic ability of the person that I'm reading. So one reading, I may be super clairvoyant, super clairaudient, and then the next reading, I'm super clairsentient and super claircognizant, and I'm not seeing anything, which can be a little strange, but that's what happens to me as a reader. I will go up and down like this, depending on the individual themselves. And that's one of the difficult parts about being an empath too. I ride the wave of their wave, if you know what I'm saying. Now, clairvoyance too, yes, they see past, they see future. If you have very, very strong clairvoyance, it can be very, very frustrating as well. Give me just 1 second, guys. I'm sorry about that. I got a really strange message, and I think one of my friends was hacked on Facebook, and I was just a little worried because they were saying that I was hacked, and I'm like, oh, I wasn't hacked, you were hacked. So just had a little moment. Thanks for your patience. We're gonna go ahead and go on about clairvoyance, and clairvoyance being very strong. When you have very strong clairvoyance and you're a dreamer or you're a dream walker, or you spend a lot of time in the astral plane or dreamscape, it can be difficult because, especially if you're having like precognitive dreams for future, or you're having things about the past come up, like you have a dream that there's a natural disaster or there's a major disaster coming and there's nothing you can do about it. And you have to learn to kind of live with that. And that can be a very difficult experience for a lot of people. Knowing something really bad is going to happen, or something really bad did happen, and there's nothing you can do to change it either which way. And a lot of psychics wonder, then why do we get that information? Why do we know about it? I don't know why the spirits feel the need to tell us. You know, every single time there does tend to be a conclusion, or there does tend to be relevance, but it can take years for that relevance to come through. Years. You know, some people have told me they dreamt of their child drowning at whatever age, and because they dreamt it every night for 3 years, they were able to prevent it from actually happening. And that's a great example of sometimes it happens, it takes a long time, you know. We don't know why. And then sometimes clairvoyance is very, very nice, but each of these different psychic abilities come with their own challenges. So that's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about the way you're receiving messages or the way that you're connecting psychically. So clairvoyant, again, comes through very, very like hazy daydream or dreamlike quality, recalling a memory. So that's when we say seeing, we're not actually seeing, we're visualizing, imagining, but in a very, very strong way that pulls us away from this 3D reality. So if you've ever daydreamed so hard you kind of faded away from the world, that's exactly what it's like. So one of the best ways to develop clairvoyance is just daydream, guided meditation, float, let it just evolve. Don't try to control what you're daydreaming about, and let it flow, because that's the most important thing for clairvoyance, is the flow. Now, clairaudience is the hearing. Hearing is not out loud, guys. Remember, a lot of the psychic ability is internal processes. It's not out here. When I'm feeling, I'm not like the table has got a feeling. I'm absorbing a feeling through the table, and I'm feeling the sense of that in myself. That's clairsentience. Clairvoyance is seeing sight in my own processes. Clairaudience is the same thing. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm hearing out loud. Most of the time I don't. Most of the time I don't see a spirit physically, and there are mediums that do. When I see spirits physically, most of the time they're shadow people. Yeah, truthfully, honestly, most of the time when I see spirits, they're shadow people. And not every medium does see that, but most of my mediumship began with light spirits and shadow people. And non-human entities is where my mediumship began. It did not start with the human mediumship. So with clairaudience, it's like your own thoughts. But I had to learn which thoughts were mine, what my internal monologue sounded like, because there's a tone or a sound vibration in the mental space, and that's where people are like, you hear voices. When you hear, bad joke, but when you hear, imagine you're reading a book. When you read a book, the tone of your internal voice changes to the tone of the author. When you're reading a Stephen King novel, if you've never read one of his books, but you have read his books before and you're very familiar with the book style that he types in, or they're very familiar with the book style that he expresses himself in, that's the tone of the author. You read in his tone. So if somebody was to take off a cover of a Stephen King novel and you read that book, you'd be like, is this Stephen King? You know, that is the same concept. There's a tone of voice we have, and even a pitch or a volume. There's a clarity to the thought, or a clarity to the sound in the thought. Again, this is all internal, guys. There's a clarity to the sound of thought in the mind. If you pay very close attention to when you think, you have pitch, because it's imagined, but it's there. You have a pitch, a tone, and a sound, and a space. When I'm thinking, I think here. When I'm hearing, I hear over in this area or over in this area. So when they're saying you hear, it's like it comes to the forefront, and it can be whispered, watery, it can be hard to hear, it can be very clear, or it can be louder than your own internal voice. But if you know how to pinpoint your thought processes, you can pinpoint that which is not a part of you and your thought processes. Another way to tell you're clairaudient is if you're constantly asking questions in your head and you're constantly coming up with your own answers. That's how I noticed at first. I was like, I asked that question because I needed to know the answer. How did I get the answer? I didn't have that knowledge previously. That knowledge was given to me by my wonderful, lovely spirit guides who are amazing. So that's clairaudient. And again, it's more like thought than it is out loud. That's the thing about clairaudience. Having moments today. Clairaudience also, the reason why it's hard is you have to be aware that when you can hear, not all spirits that give you information are accurate. That's why I always tell you guys, make intention before you do readings, that you're only connecting to true and good, those that unconditionally love, messages are true and accurate. So, period. So nothing else can connect. It's like setting, it's like creating settings for a chat room. Only certain people are allowed in the chat room. Not everyone's allowed in the chat room. Because I've had readings where even after setting my intention, because a family member was so close to the individual I was reading, they were butting in and they were disagreeing with everything I was saying. So I was getting mixed messages. So they disagreed with this person's guides, and the family member wanted them to do this and the guides wanted them to do this, and it was just very, very conflicting, and I had to give them their money back. But I digress. I always go with guides first, guys. I don't go with family. Family is biased, and family does not always have your best interest at heart. Family may think that they have the best interest at heart for you, but they don't have always the knowing of what's best for you, whereas spirit guides do. Spirit guides tend to know what's best for you and tend to know what you need the most. So it's really, really important when you're doing readings that you're aware that this is actually true. That's why we set intention. That's why it's so very important that we set intention, because we don't want that flow to be interrupted, guys. Very, very, very important. We don't want just any wahoo jumping into the conversation. We don't need a peanut gallery. We need facts. So that's why we focus on intention. All right, clairgustance and clairambience is clear taste. This space says, yes, I have gone through clear taste, where you taste things that psychically taste things, but you can actually taste it. I'm moving on because guys, the memories because of this psychic ability. Why it's there, I don't know. Moving on. Clear taste, which is, again, clairgustance. And then the last one is clairalience or clairscent. Like scent, of course. I will spell both. Clairscent is smell. So you have your 5 different senses, your 5 different types of ability, psychic ability. You have taste, smell, feel, touch. I don't think I went into clear touch. I'm very sorry about that. Clairagency. I went straight into clairgustance and clairambience. This is why I had my list, so I didn't lose track and so I didn't forget anything. I still went out of order, but that's okay. Clairagency is actually psychometry. For those of you that are not familiar with psychometry, psychometry is the ability to touch an object. A lot of people will bring objects to readings, not really give you a lot of information, put it in your hand and tell you to read it. I've had some seriously bad experiences because of psychometry. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from doing psychometry. I was never formally taught how to do psychometry. The first time I opened myself up to an object that was a picture belonging to someone, and I did not take a look at it. It was a child abuse case. I did not know that. I was not informed of that. Made me really, 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 really sick, empathically. I became physically ill from that experience, and I did not swear off psychometry, but it became a lot more hesitant or a lot more cautious in what I chose to open my energy up to and readings through psychometry. Psychometry, when you open up your energy to receive information through an object, through touch, really connects with my personal physical empathy, does tend to set off other psychic abilities such as clairsentience, such as clairvoyance. You see a person, you see events, you feel certain feelings, you know certain information. Excuse me again. You know certain information. So the point of me saying I've had some bad experiences through psychometry from the first couple times that I had been trying it is just to make you aware, to protect your energy. Don't open up fully to an object unless you have some clarity, or just open up very slowly. Just be careful, guys. Respect your energy, and don't let things into your energy unless you feel comfortable with them being in your energy, or be aware of how to release it. So if you don't know how to release it, maybe take it easy with the psychometry and really practice with objects that you know are safe for you, and just play games with your friends. Have your friends bring you objects from family members that they loved. Tell them not to tell you who it belongs to, and then start practicing that way, especially if you love their family as well. That might be the easiest way to go about it, or to start if you're practicing with psychometry. And that is actually all of the psychic ability. Again, claircognizant, knowing, clairsentience, empathic, emotional, medical or physical, geomantic, which is place, plant, animal, cognizant or intuitive, and mirror, empath. Clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairagency, clairgustance or ambience, clairtaste, clairalience, or clairscent, which is smell. I hope you learned something today. I know that was a very, very brief explanation, but I hope it gave you a good idea of how each one kind of plays a role or a factor, and it tends to not be like what people think it's like. So if you did learn something today, if you have any questions, or if you have anything you want to know about, that you want to learn about, or that you want more information on, even if it's a psychic ability that you'd like me to go more in depth with, please feel free to comment down below. I do want to make response videos. I do want to be interactive with the community, and I want to be able to give you as much information as I can. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I hope you all have a beautiful day. Bye for now.